Hello, welcome to my channel, Tired Old Man. I hope everyone has been enjoying the videos that we've been posting about my home and the history on the home and moving it, rebuilding the chimneys, then finally the new roof. But today we're going to talk about something that I started in my very first video, and I decided to change the way I was going to do my channel a little bit and wanted to show the footage of all the things that you have seen up to now. But today what we're going to talk about, and this video might run a little long. I have no idea how it's going. I'm just getting started, so I have no idea how long it's going to be. But I'm not going to rush this video because this video is kind of important to me to tell the history of the house. So today what we're talking about is the newspaper article that the local newspaper did on this house, my family's house, in 1976. At this time, I had already got married. I had moved out of the home. I was not living in a home in 1976, but I was living in it up to just a few years prior to that. And so all this history that I'm telling you is very important to me. It's important that I share this history with my family and get to carry it on, because this house is not just my house. This house belongs to not the community, but it does belong to my family. And I actually own the house, but this house encompasses more than just me. It encompasses my whole family. They have some history involved in this house also. And so I want them to feel that this house is part of them, because this house really is part of their history. I was actually, I'm the only one that is still living that has lived in this house. Well, let me take that back. My mom is still living, not my granny, but my mom. She's 83 years old at the date of this recording. And so my mom is still living, but I'm the only one that other than her that can tell any of the history prior to me and my wife getting starting to date. But anyways, enough of a tired old man rambling. But I just wanted to kind of tell you what this video is going to be about. So if you don't want to hear the history of this precious home to me, then just catch up in the next video. But I promise you, if you're a history buff or if you're a family member, this is a video that you're not going to want to miss. This tells the history, and not the whole history, but it does talk about, and there's some pictures and different things. But let's just dive into it and let you see. The first picture that you're seeing here is me. And the reason I'm looking to the side is because I have to look at my computer so I can read it and all that. So I apologize for not looking directly at the camera, but I have to look and read and all that. And the camera, I can't put the camera in front of where I'm reading I couldn't read it. So I apologize for not looking directly at the camera when I'm reading or these pictures. But that's the only way I know to do it. I'm not a professional and don't claim to be. But the first picture that you're seeing here is, and I've talked about this in another video, but I want to incorporate some things in this video that have already been shown in some other videos. But there's a lot in this video that's not been talked about or it's not been shared. But this picture was taken of me. I'm the little boy that's sitting in front of the house. This picture, I think I was about not quite 2 years old when this picture was taken. And you can see a little bit of what the house looked like when I was a little boy and when I was growing up. And if you want to hear some history about that, go back and listen to my video where I was talking about stories, telling stories of the house. And you'll get to see some or hear some really good stories about the house. But this picture, like I said, was about me. And I've got to fast forward or run through the next to get to the next picture. The next picture is just zooms in on the house and shows the house a little better picture. In this picture is the newspaper article that we're talking about. And you can see I've got in the lower left hand corner is blurred out because that's a different article. It's not about nothing about the house. This is something else that the paper had put. But you can see that the paper almost did a full page article just on this house. And like I said, it was done in 1976, early part of 1976. But I'm going to go in and read the article because I don't know how good this is going to show up on the on TV or if you're watching it on your phone or whatever. So I'm going to read the article, and as we get through doing the article, and I'm going to elaborate on some of the things that it talks about. So hope I don't get too long-winded. They tell me that I do, but this video is kind of important to me, and so here we go. The picture. This is a picture that is just the house, and this picture was taken in 1976. And this is the way this house looked when I moved out. This is pretty much the way this house looked from the time I was probably 10 years old, and the rest of the time up until we got ready to move it. You can see it's got the original roof on it, not when it was first built, but the roof on it is the same roof that's been on this house my entire life. And you can see that it has a oil tank sitting out by the kitchen chimney. And at this time, the house did not have gas heaters. It actually had oil heaters in front of the fireplaces. But we'll move on to the next. The next one I think is just that's just the whole clip of the most of the article, and then when we get into this one, this is the bigger part of the article, and this is where I'm going to start reading it and elaborate a little bit on it. It says there are no records to verify the stories told by 98-year-old Miss Cora Smith, or the tales passed down from generation to generation, and that is pretty much true. It's saying that there is, and it'll tell later on in the article that the Bible has gotten lost and all that. But my wife she is into genealogy, if I said that word right. But she's into going back and researching the history of not just her family, but also my family. And so my wife has gone back and done the research, and we have all the birth dates, all the marriages, all the children. So everything that everything that it talks about in this article is true. Some of the stories are true, and you're going to have to take my word on that because I've heard them all of my life. But as far as the dates of when people were born and things that happened like that, they are all documented. My wife has went back and got the research. She didn't get it from the paper. She went back and got it from her genealogy research. So there is records to go back and verify the dates and stuff of some of this stuff that was happening. So, but it says Miss Smith's recollection of her younger days is quite vivid in her mind. And I'm going to say a little bit about Aunt Cora. I'm going to do a whole video clip on nothing but Aunt Cora, but I am going to talk a little bit about her here. She was old when I was born, when I was little. She was an old lady when she was when I was little. I just can remember when she could actually come to the dinner table and eat. So she was an old lady. But I'm going to tell you something about Aunt Cora. Her mind was at this time was sharp as a tack. She could go back and remember things and tell you things. She was a very smart lady for her time. She could spell any, you could ask her any word and she could spell it. She knowed her history, not just of the house, but I mean, she was a very smart lady. And from what I am told from my family, from my granny and pa, she was a very hard-working lady. She she worked hard in the fields and at home. She was uh, a really good worker, and she was a really good person. But anyways, Aunt Cora was, her mind was pretty sharp at this time of this article. She was born on April 22nd, and the paper says 1877, but that is not right, and we've got documentation to prove it. She was born in 1877. It was just a typo by the paper. They just put 87 instead of 77. To Alan and Sally Smith. She lives in the home um, where she was born, the same house in which her father was born on February 16th, 1829. And it says that he was born there. And because he was born there, and we know when his daddy was born, that's how we come up with how old the house is. Because Aunt Cora's granddaddy actually built the home, the original part of the home. He built it. And so that's, we don't know the exact date when this house was built, but we can narrow it down within about a 4 to 5 year period of when the house was built, because of Theophilus Smith, Aunt Cora's daddy, being born in the house. And then it says when he was born in 1829. So by us doing our research and finding out all that, that's how we come up with the date that we think the house was actually built, from 1820 until 1824 or 25. Somewhere in those 4 to 5 year period is when we think the house was actually built. The first 4 rooms of the house. And then the kitchen was added on later when the house was this is the second time this house has been moved. The first time it was moved, it was just the 2 rooms and the 2 loft rooms. And then when it was moved to where its location you see in these pictures, it was, the kitchen was actually built. So, but it says on, goes on to say that the original house contained 4 rooms, 2 on the bottom floor, and 2 loft rooms. The house was built by Miss Smith's grandfather, Theophilus Smith, and they spelled his name wrong. It should have been a PH instead of a TH. Just a short ways from where the house is now located. And that's what I mean about the house being moved. When I moved it, it's the second time that the house had been moved. It says, after the house was moved to its present location, a breezeway and a kitchen were built. Now, what they mean by a breezeway is the kitchen was actually built, I don't know, probably 10 foot from the original part of the house. And so the kitchen was not actually connected to the house. There was, the way I understand, there was no roof that connected the house and the kitchen part. It was just separated. The kitchen was built off, like I said, 8 or 10 feet from the house. And that was the norm back then. And they did that to keep the heat out of the house where you were actually sleeping, and keep the kitchen, because everything all the cooking that you did then was with a fire. And so that's the reason that most kitchens were built separate from the house back in the early 1800s. And it says after the breezeway was built, cooking was done in the fireplace, and there was no covering on the dirt floor. So this is just, when I was living in the house did have a floor in it, a wood floor. but evidently when it was kitchen was first built, and this is just by stories being passed down from Aunt Cora and on to my grandparents and on to me. The house with the kitchen when it was originally built did not have a floor in it. It did not have a ceiling in it. It just had the rafters in it, and it had a dirt floor. Let me move on to the next clip, and this is a picture of um, Aunt Cora's daddy and her mama. The picture is the late Alan and Sally Smith is the only record their descendants have. A Bible which contains records of births and deaths came apart from use many years ago, and it did. And as far as I can remember, I've never seen this Bible that they're talking about. I can't find it in none of my papers or none of the stuff that I've done. So I've never seen the Bible, but the records that we have are from census or whatever. That's how we got our records. But let's move on to the next clip. And it says, today the house has all modern conveniences, and it does at this time in 76. But the original frame, seals, and pegs used to hold the house together remain. And if you'll go back and look at the video with Aunt Cora's chimney, where I built that one, you'll see one of the pegs that was holding the house together. You can actually see it. And I thought that was really neat, a really neat find. And we got some more video that we're going to show you later on in some more clips later on of some more history and pegs and different things that will show you the way the house was built originally, the first four rooms. It says the 3 fireplaces are covered and space heaters are now used to heat the home, and that's what they were talking about at this time. They were oil heaters that sat in front of the fireplaces. The pot hooks in the kitchen fireplace remain, but are hidden behind paneling, and that's true too. We did find the pot holders and stuff when we tore the chimneys down to move the house. So that part of it is true, and I'll tell you a little story about that, some of that later on. It says the stairs to the loft have been removed, and ceiling covers the openings. That is true too. In my lifetime, I never seen the stairs. I don't even know if I ever went in the loft part. It was the attic part of the house when I was little, and we didn't go up there to play. We didn't. It was just, you just didn't go up there, and there was no way to get up there without a ladder, and so nobody went up there. And it says the breezeway has been closed in, and the front porch is now an extra bedroom. And what they're talking about, the breezeway, my whole life was never called a breezeway. It was called the porch. We really had 3 different parts of that house that we really talked about, and we referred to, I guess. If you were in the kitchen, it was referred to as the kitchen. If you were in the big room or Aunt Cora's room or any other part of the house except for the porch, it was referred to as the house. And then the part they're talking about here, which is breezeway, was referred to as the porch. So you had the kitchen, the porch, and the house. And that's the way it was referred to my whole lifetime. And that's still the way we refer to the house when we were talking about it amongst the family members and immediate family. That's the way. It's not breezeway. It's kitchen, porch, and house. And the extra bedroom is the front part of the house. It used to be a porch, and I talked about that in an earlier video where I was going through and showing the inside of the house. That was closed in my whole lifetime. I never remember that being a porch. It was always a bedroom, and that's where my Aunt Carolyn slept in that bedroom. All the time that I can remember, that's where she slept at. And well, maybe when I was a little boy, she might have slept in the big room. But most of the time, she slept in that room that got closed in. And I'm not talking about the porch in between the kitchen and the house. I'm talking about in the front part of the house part. There used to be a little porch there, and it got closed in and made a bedroom before my lifetime. So it says the chimney located in the breezeway porch has an indentation caused by the sharpening of knives. And I'm going to show a little video right here. And this video was actually in the building of the chimney in this Aunt Cora's room and the porch. So watch this video, and then we'll pick up after the video.
That's what she looks like. Granny beat her ice. Sharpen her knife.
I want to explain a little bit what I meant by Granny could beat her ice and sharpen her knife. What you're seeing here is a picture that was taken by the local newspaper when they did a article on the house in 1976, and it showed the history and we're telling about the house. Well, what you're seeing here is a picture of the chimney inside of the breezeway, what we call the porch of Aunt Cora's room. Well, during that time, the fireplaces were not being used to burn wood in. They were never used to burn wood in my whole lifetime. But they did have gas heaters in front of the fireplaces. But this particular fireplace did not have a gas heater in front of it, and so it was not used at all. Well, the family decided that they wanted to do away with the fireplace and put a wall there, and they turned that room into a laundry room and bathroom. Remember, up to that time there was only one bathroom in the house, so they wanted an extra bathroom. And the fireplace and chimney were taken down. But I wanted to show this picture here because what you're seeing in this block is where up to the chimney was taken down probably 150 years. That was used on the corner of that chimney to sharpen the butcher knives and just knives that they used in the house. And it wore, the corner of that chimney off was rounded, and it was very noticeable when you went in the house. You could see it. It was wore off quite a bit. It wasn't just a little bit. And so that just shows you how much that got used to sharpen knives over probably 150 years. And so that's a little history about the sharpening knives part. What I meant by beat her ice, when I was a little boy, refrigerators didn't have ice makers then. If you wanted ice, you had an ice tray or something like that. Well, what my granny did is she didn't like the ice trays because they were aggravating. They were not plastic back then. They were aluminum and metal, and she just didn't like them. So what she did is she froze a block of ice. And at mealtime, it was my job when I was a little boy to take that block of ice and go. It was put in I'm guessing it was a flour sack, but it was a cloth sack that I guess she had bought flour in or something. But it was clean. She used it. And my job was to put that ice in there and go out. And if you'll see in this next block, there's a hammer laying down there, a ball peen hammer. And my job was to take that hammer and put it against that chimney and beat the ice up into small enough hunks that we could put it in our glasses to drink with. So that's what I meant about beat her ice and sharpen her knife. Just a little history about what it was like when I grew up in this home. Okay, I hope you liked that little video, telling about the fireplace in the chimney that was actually taken down after this article was done. It was up in 1976, and that chimney got taken down probably somewhere in the early 80s. I'm thinking somewhere in there, and I told why in some earlier videos. But now we're going to go back to the newspaper article, and it says Alan Smith was a farmer and often worked tapping trees for turpentine. I have heard them talk about that being done way back before my time, and evidently they sold the turpentine. I don't know why or what it was used for, but there was a lot of pine trees around there when I was a little boy. So not very much farmland, but a lot of pine trees for him to tap if he wanted to, I guess. So it says he and his wife had 8 children, and Aunt Cora is the only one of those children that I ever knew. I never knew any other one because, like I told you, Aunt Cora was very old when I was a little boy. But it says Miss Cora Smith was the youngest and the only one who did not marry. That could, and she said, Aunt Cora says, that could be one of the reasons I lived so long. She laughingly said, and hard work. And then she goes on to tell, it says, I would have to work all day in the fields, and then at night I would sew for the family, she said. So I told you she was a hard worker. And it says she attended school. She says here that she went until she was grown. And I don't know. All I know is she was a very smart lady. And so I have no idea what she meant by she went till she was grown. I guess she meant she went till she graduated, but I have no idea. She didn't elaborate, and I don't know. It says, there's one thing I can remember about my schooling. I was left-handed, and the teacher would slap me because I didn't use my right hand. I don't know about y'all, but in today's time, that would not happen. And if it did happen, they would be it would be a bad thing. But back in those days, it was just different. It was just different. And I guess the teacher was mean or whatever. It had to be mean to do that. But I think that's telling that it was just different in the times in the early 1800s, or not early 18, because she was born in 77. I guess the later 1800s. It was just a different time. But even when I was in school, if you misbehaved in school then, you got a paddling. Either the teacher paddled you or you went to the principal's office and you got a paddling. And so it was just different times back then. But I just thought, and this is me thinking, that it was something, it had to traumatize Aunt Cora for that to happen. You know, she had to be young for the just starting school for the teacher to be doing that. But it traumatized that lady or girl at the time. And she remembered that 90 some years later. That's still stuck in her mind that that teacher slapped her. I don't know. Y'all dwell on that and think about it your own. But I mean, I just think that was bad. That was just bad. She said she also remembers the stories her father told about his 4 years as a soldier in the Civil War and how her mother managed the home while he was away. 4 years that man was in the Civil War. I never heard her talk, very little that I can remember, about him being in the Civil War. And if he come back and told anything about his time in the Civil War. But I just think back on Aunt Cora's mother being there for 4 years. And this was a farming family. And so it had to be tough on Miss Sally Smith to hold the fort down, so to speak, and farm and raise a crop and feed those children while her husband was in the service. So y'all can elaborate and think about that all you want. I'm just reading it as it's in the article. But anyways, let's move on. It says Miss Smith's great uncle Robert and his wife Bliss reside with her. And old time I was living, my granny and my pa stayed with Aunt Cora, and it's because Aunt Cora was so old they needed to take care of her. I don't know where there was rest homes back then or not, but as far as our family, nobody went to a rest home. You just took care of them, and that's what my granny and pa did. They took care of her until the day that she passed away. She never went nowhere. Aunt Cora never, in my lifetime, never went to a doctor. She never went to a hospital. Back then, if she needed a doctor, and she did need one periodically, but not very much, when I can remember. But the doctor come to the house to see her. And he's the same doctor that delivered me when I was born. So, just different times back then, different times. But the doctor, I do remember him coming. I know one occasion, and it seemed like I do remember 2 occasions that he come to the house to see Aunt Cora. Now, if the rest of the family needed to go to the doctor, we went to his office, but he come to the house to see Aunt Cora. It says she recalls the story told of how the Yankee soldier would come through the air searching for food, especially meat. One day, the story goes, a Yankee captain came through the area ahead of his men. Taking pity on Miss Smith and seeing how desperate the family was, he helped her hide the meat up the chimney away from his soldiers. Now, that tells you something about the soldier, and it tells you something also about how desperate Aunt Cora's family was at that time. They did not have much to eat, and I'm pretty sure that it was I know they were poor, because my family, like I said, were not rich people. So I can just imagine how hard it was for her to survive. Remember, her husband has been gone to war now for 4 years, and this is towards the end of the war, and the captain has come through. And the way the story was told to me is he said that his men were going to get all the chickens, they were going to get all the hogs, they were going to get all the animals, and they were going to slaughter them for them to eat. And anything that was in the garden, they were going to get for them to eat. But he knew that this captain knew that this family needed something to survive on. And so the way this story was told to me is he told them, he said, you can't bury it. If you try to bury it in the field, they will find it. He said, because that's what they looked for if you went out and buried it. He said, the only place that you can hide it, that they will not look, is up the chimney. And he took a ham and put it on a stick and stuffed it up in the chimney and hid it up there from his own men, because he knew just how desperate this family was, or would be, especially after his men come through. So that just shows you the compassion that this soldier had for this family. So I guess everybody can do their own thinking on that and the way they feel about it, but it tells me a lot, that story. And that story's been told to me several times by Aunt Cora herself and by my granny and my pa. So let's go on, and we'll move on in the article. And it says, Miss Smith takes pride in the fact that she has only been seriously ill once in her 98 years. that was when she was a child. She had typhoid fever and was bedridden for 9 weeks. She was, and that evidently I don't know when it was. I didn't never hear that story talked about much either, so I can't elaborate on that. I'm just reading you the article. It says she is unable to walk, and like I told you, only when I was a little boy can I remember her walking and being able to come to the kitchen table to eat. Probably after I was 8 years old or so, her food had to be carried to her in her room. She was not able to come to the kitchen table. But I will say this about Aunt Cora, and because I've not said it before, that lady, up until she died, she had an appetite. That lady could put some food away now. I've talked about my granny's cooking and how good could cook. Well, my Aunt Cora loved her cooking because she was a eating lady right on up to her last dying days. She was a eating lady. But let's move on. It says she was unable to walk, but recalls the many times she did walk to church, the church her father helped build. And that is true. That is my home church, that my family helped start that church and build it. So I do take a little pride in that, I'm still a member there. So, and then it goes on to say, there is no family Bible which records birth, deaths, and marriages, only a picture of Alan and Sally Smith. I have a picture of them, and I wish I could show it to you, but I tried to find it, but I can't. We have it in storage, and so one of these days when we get the house finished and get everything back out of storage, I'll be able to find it and show it to you. We had a Bible. Aunt Cora goes on to say, we had a Bible when I was growing up, Miss Smith said, but we children loved to look at it, and it came apart from handling it so much. And that's why I told you I've never seen this picture of that. I've just never seen it. Okay, and then after it says about from handling it so much. Although she has no close relatives living, there are 399 distant relatives which can be accounted for. And remember, my granny and pa, or my pa, he is a great nephew of hers. So that's what it's talking about when it says close. Aunt Cora was so old when this was taken. She was 98 years old. All her immediate family and close relatives had already gone on. So, but it says there's 399 distant relatives that can be accounted for. These include 4 nieces and 1 nephew, 72 great nieces and nephews, and my pa Robert is included in that 72. 176 great nieces and nephews, 141 great nieces and nephews, and 5 great nieces and nephews. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. And my granny and pa sit down and put that 399 together, I'm pretty sure. My granny could tell you, people way distant relatives. She could tell you their birth dates. She could tell you when their kids were born. She could tell you all kinds of dates. She was like an encyclopedia of keeping up with stuff like that. She was a very smart lady in her own, and she could, like I said, she could just tell you. I mean, she didn't go look it up in a book. She could just tell you right now. She could remember it. And my granny, I love her a lot and miss her a lot. But it says Miss Core Smith says she often thinks of the days of her childhood and of her family. And I can see that because as I get older, I think back on my childhood. And I guess that's the reason that I've started this YouTube channel and want to record this history, because when I'm gone and my mama is gone, my wife knows some of the history of this house. But when we're gone and we're old, my mama's 83 years old. When we're gone, if I don't record this history, there's nobody else that can tell these stories. So that's one of the reasons that I'm telling these stories, so my relatives and my grandchildren and children and great grandchildren and on, they will have this history, because I'm hoping this house is going to keep surviving and the farm is going to keep surviving. And so I'm hoping that this, by me recording this, that it will kind of spark in them to draw back on their history, and it'll give them something to tie them back to 200 years ago and tie them to the land. And so something to be proud of. Not everybody can say that. And I am very proud that farm has been in my family for all this time, and this house has been in my family. And I was talking earlier today to one of my kids about this. I know I own the house, and I know that I'm the one that's restoring the house. And I talked a little bit about this earlier, but I'm just a caretaker of the house. I'll be gone soon. This house has lived through generation and generation and generation, and I consider myself just a caretaker of it while I have it. And then it'll get passed on to one of my kids, and then there'll be a caretaker. So if you're one of my children and you do get this house and you're the one that inherits it, please preserve the history of it, because it's very important to me. So anyways, got a little personal there. Didn't mean to. Let's get on back to the story. And I done lost my place. So, we're talking about that she's often thinks back on her childhood and her family. And I can see where she did that. It said her mind again goes back, and as she whispers, all my family and friends are gone. There's only me left. So I can see she's 98 years old. And I wish when I was younger that I had spent more time with this precious lady and gleaned some more history from her that I could have passed on. But you know, when you're a kid, you don't think of that. We all think about these things when we get my age. And I've got a cousin that is watching the videos. And she says she gets really sentimental watching them. And we do that when we get older. But I beg my kids, please, don't wait till you get my age. Get these stories, because there'll be stories that I don't record. And so, get them while you can. From me, and from my mom, and from your mom. And glean those stories and listen to them. I guess that's the reason that my middle son, Tyler, asked me to record, not for YouTube, but to record the stories because he wanted them. But I know this got a little bit personal. I didn't mean for it to, but I know this was going to be hard for me to talk about too. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. Got one more thing that I almost forgot because it's behind me. But this clock, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this clock here. This clock sat on the mantle in Aunt Cora's room above the fireplace my whole life. And that clock sat there. Even after I moved out and got married, that clock sat there until we had to move my mom out of the house. And then I got the clock and to preserve it because I didn't want anything to happen to it because it's very precious to me. But this clock, I remember my pa going in there every night before he went to bed and opening the door and reaching in here and getting the thing and winding this clock up. I remember it every night he did that. And I'm going to try to find somebody to restore this clock. Not the appearance of the clock, not the outside looks of the clock, but the inner workings of the clock and get it back working. My brother, who has gone on, he was, I don't know how to say this, he loved to tinker on things. And he loved to hold them in his hands and hold them and play with them and feel them. He was just like that. And he got some of the parts out of this clock and tinkered with them. And so that's the reason that the clock doesn't work. Some of the pieces are missing. And so, but this clock, like I've told about the house, I'm the caretaker of it, but it'll get passed on. And this clock has a lot of history with other people. And so I'm just getting to be the caretaker of it to get passed on. This clock means a lot to a lot of people in my family, not just immediate family, but cousins and uncles and things like that, aunts. It means something to them, and I want to preserve it. And when we get this house restored and get it finished, this clock's going back on that mantle in Aunt Cora's room. And hopefully, one day I'll be winding it up, and I'll be taking care of it. So, but I hope everyone has enjoyed this. I filmed all this in one filming. This is just one sit down of an old man rambling on and reading an article. I hope you've enjoyed it. I might put in a little clip or two here or there of some other stuff that I've already recorded. But and I did mess up a time or two. I'm going to have to cut out that. But most of this is just one sitting of an old man rambling on. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that my kids enjoy it especially. And please preserve the history. Thank everyone for watching. I know only probably most of my family is going to watch it up to the end. But please like and subscribe. God bless. We'll see you in the next video.